I gave my daughter the house I built with my own hands. She looked around, wrinkled her nose, and said, "This? I wanted something nicer." That is when I finally saw her for who she really was. Not my little girl, but a stranger. My name is Sam Whitaker. I am 62, a grandfather, and a carpenter who never learned to leave a job half done. I raised the ridge beam with friends whose names are still pencil-scratched on the attic joist. I laid the front steps after my wife's last surgery so she would have a place to sit in the sun. The house smells like coffee and sawdust because I keep it clean and used. I thought handing it to my daughter would bring us back together. I was wrong. I could point, room by room, to work my hands, remember. The kitchen window over the sink is a half-inch lower than standard because Mary was 5 feet 2 and wanted to see the maple in the side yard without getting on her toes. The pantry shelves have a shallow lip so jars do not skate when the grandkids slam the back door. In the hall closet, I notched 2 pegs a touch farther apart because winter coats swallow space. None of this is fancy. All of it is on purpose. I stood in the doorway while my daughter moved through the rooms with a tape measure, quick and confident. I had watched her take first steps on these floors. Back then, I had held my arms out and told her to come to me. Now she walked right past me. "It is quaint," she said, which is a word people use when they mean old. "We can level this kitchen, open it up. Also, that stove has to go." "Your mother loved this stove," I said. "Of course," she said, eyes on her phone. "But things move on." What I wanted to say was, yes, things do move on, but not everything is meant to be dragged behind your car until it breaks. I did not say it. I have a long history of not saying what I should. It is an old habit from when Mary was sick, and we learned to avoid making small arguments that wasted good energy. I carried that quiet into places it did not belong. The stove is nothing special to anyone but us. We bought it the spring the old one died on Easter. Mary picked the model with big, honest knobs because she said buttons lie. We made soup on it the day she came home from chemo and grilled cheese the night the power came back after the ice storm. It has a dent on the left side where the cast iron skillet kissed it hard. I left the dent. When my daughter said to replace it, I felt something sit up inside me. I wanted to argue. Instead, I went to the pantry and pulled down the shoebox where I keep papers I do not want to lose. I dumped it on the kitchen table. Bank transfers, receipts, short notes in my handwriting. I drew a line down a sheet of butcher paper and wrote dates and amounts like I was laying out studs for a wall. If I wrote it down, I could not dodge it. 4 years ago, $12,000 for a car the bank was about to take. "We will pay you back next month," she texted. I printed that text, circled the words, and kept it anyway, as if paper could make a promise real. I remember how proud she sounded when she said the word we. I wanted to be in that we. I paid. 3 summers ago, $7,500 for final classes she said would put her in management. She sent me a link to a dress for graduation. The dress link disappeared. The graduation never happened. I told myself schedules are hard. I told myself people get busy. I told myself lots of things that were kinder and easier than the truth. That winter, $18,000 for emergency dental work. I wired it from this table because I could hear pain in her voice. 2 weeks later, a voicemail came by mistake. She was laughing with a friend. "He thinks he is investing in me." Sweet old man. I will get veneers that look better than his whole house. I put the phone face down on my wife's apron because I did not like the feel of it in my hand. I should have listened harder then. I did not. I told myself people say careless things when they are nervous. I told myself she was bluffing bravado. I chose the softest version of every fact. Last spring, $9,800, just until Friday. Friday slid like a loose hinge. Last month, $14,000 for a deposit on a place with a view. "People will know we made it," she said. "Views matter." When I asked for a plan, she replied, "Dad, you do not get how the world works. We need real money, not your workshop wisdom." I added the figures with a carpenter's pencil. 61,300, not a dollar paid back. I had called it love. It was me avoiding a line I should have drawn years ago. I was not only paying bills, I was paying to delay a necessary conversation. Mary would have said it softer and earlier. She had a way of putting her hand on your shoulder and saying the simple sentence you were trying not to hear. She came back from the hallway and flicked the shelves I built when my wife learned to quilt. "These are sad," she said. "We will replace them." She had already started saying we. That word that had felt like family now sounded like a team huddled on the other side of a line of tape. I went out to the porch to breathe. My granddaughter sat on the steps drawing a lemon tree. She always draws things with stems and leaves. She likes the lines. She likes watching something grow on paper and then in real dirt. "Granddad, can I help you plant it tomorrow?" "You can pick the spot," I said. "Find the sun." We walked the yard once in slow steps. She held the paper up and turned it until her drawn tree's shadow matched the maples, like she was lining up two worlds. "Here," she said, by the downspout where evening light gathers. I pushed my boot in and felt how the soil answered. Good enough. I could feel the house at my back like a living thing that was tired of being negotiated with. My daughter left with a man in a blazer to get a contractor's eyes on it. The car door shut like a promise that did not include me. The man did not look at me. He looked at the house like it was inventory. I started fixing my side of the mess. You do not teach respect by speech. You teach it by what you change and what you refuse to change. I canceled the contractor she had booked. I returned the shiny new appliances I had bought because she said they would sweeten the place. The clerk slid me store credit. I slid the paper into my wallet and felt something unclench. On the curb, with my hands on the warm steering wheel, I did 3 simple things I should have done years ago. I removed her as an authorized user on my card, I deleted automatic transfers, and I set a limit on outgoing payments so I would have to approve any large send. I watched my finger press the confirm button. I took a breath I had not taken in years. I had gotten used to reacting to emergencies. This was the first time in a long time I had acted before the emergency. At the bank the next morning, a young man with a perfect part in his hair typed while I spoke. He had the manner of someone who has been taught to act like a person older than he is. He printed a sheet and slid it to me. I read it slowly. It said what I said. I signed. Ruth at the next window watched like a mother hen and nodded once, a small blessing. On the way out, she called my name and said, "Do not let anyone shame you for doing the right thing a year late." It landed. The shame had always been a bigger problem than the money. At home, I changed the alarm code and removed my daughter's login. I taped a list to the fridge. What stays? What changes? Stays: shelves, stove, porch light, photos. Changes: steps need new treads, handrail sanded, window latches oiled. A house list, not a speech. Speeches make people dig in. Lists make a day move. I stood in the kitchen and tried to remember when I first started calling avoidance kindness. I pictured Mary with her sewing. When she made a mistake, she pulled the thread and tried again. She did not pretend the seam was straight. I took down her apron and restitched her name where the thread had worn thin. The letters were crooked. I left them that way. Then I did something I had never done in 62 years. I took the house out of the realm of feeling and put it into plain paper. I drove to the legal clinic on Main, where a woman named Delgado kept a tidy office that smelled like old books and lemon oil. I set the butcher paper on her desk and told her the simple truth. I almost handed her the deed because I did not want to have a difficult talk. I need to stop myself from doing that again. She listened. She asked short questions. She did not make faces. She drew 3 boxes on a yellow pad. "This is you," she said, tapping the first. "This is the house," tapping the second. "This is the future you want," tapping the third. "Right now, all the arrows point through your phone when it buzzes. We are going to change where the arrows go." She laid out choices in clear words. I did not need fancy. I needed something I could look at when my resolve got soft. We set up a simple trust with me as trustee and my granddaughter as the one who would benefit after I'm gone. We wrote a short covenant that said no demolition, no exterior changes without my written consent, no sale while I am alive, and that the stove, the front steps, and the porch light stay. The clerk at the recorder pressed a stamp that sounded like a door closing. On the way home, I bought a pack of sheet protectors and a roll of blue painter's tape. I taped the notice inside the front window, eye level, crisp and square. Notice of recorded covenant. No demolition. No exterior alterations. Instrument number. Trustee consent required. Below that, smaller, I added, private residence. No photography. No deliveries without approval. I did not feel triumphant. I felt steadier. If I wavered later, the paper would not. The next morning, a flatbed eased up to the curb. Dumpster delivery for demo, the driver chirped. He was cheerful, fast, and young. He had the look of someone who can move a heavy thing without complaining. No demo, I said, and pointed at the notice. He studied it. He read the instrument number like he was trying to see the trick in a card. He tipped his hat a half-inch, like men used to. You sure? He asked. I am sure. He nodded and drove away. I called the dispatcher and had my address flagged. Do not drop equipment without homeowner present. She said her name was Carla and repeated the instruction back to me. I wrote Carla on my list with a thank you. I took a minute and told myself out loud, this is what a boundary looks like. It is not a fight. It is a phone call and a note on a fridge. That afternoon I used the store credit to buy cedar, pulled the soft treads, cut new ones, and drove each screw flush. The work steadied me, the rhythm of measure, cut, drive, check, again. My granddaughter held the box for me and learned to sight a board for a twist. We wrote sun on our faces on a cedar stake for the lemon tree and tapped it in. She asked if she could make the letters. She printed them careful and straight. She likes order. I know where she gets that. They came at 9 the next morning. My daughter, the man in the blazer, a contractor with a sledge in the truck bed, the tape measure ready. The alarm sounded when the door opened. I let it ring until their shoulders crept up to their ears, then I pressed the new code. The man in the blazer set his card on the counter like a small flag. Your code is wrong, my daughter said, like she had just tested it twice and I had failed a quiz. It is not, I said. I handed her an envelope. It held my letter, a copy of the covenant, and the trust memo. Read the first page, I said. That is the ledger you asked me not to keep. She read the first line. It hit her face. The contractor's eyes shifted to the window and caught on the notice. He stepped outside and took a picture of the instrument number, then put his phone away like a man who had just learned a new rule. We will be in touch, the blazer said. Do not be, I said. I kept my voice steady. It has taken me too long to learn that steady beats loud. They left. The house exhaled. I walked to the breaker panel and turned on Mary's lamp. It threw the kind of light we used to eat soup by. I tightened the back bedroom knob and oiled hinges. I placed blue tape where boards wanted attention. The little flags calmed me. Problems had a place to stand. My daughter does not like quiet. She likes momentum, shows, reveals. At lunch that day she texted, "Meet me at the diner." I set a boundary in the message. I will pay for lunch and nothing else. She arrived with a friend who carried a folder with tabs and a pen clipped to the cover. He sat across from me like a man ready to sell me a bridge. "We need a cosigner," the friend said. "It is just your name." "My name is not just," I said. "I have signed my name to work I am proud of. I have signed it to checks I was not. I have watched how a name can get dragged behind a person's life until it is scraped raw. My father co-signed for his brother once. It turned Christmas into a season of excuses. We ate ham that year while my father stared at the window. He would have said it was fine. It was not fine. I remember the look on my mother's face when the phone rang, and she knew it was not for her. It will help her future, my daughter said. I want her to have a present that adds up, I said. I slid the copy of the covenant across the table and tapped the line that said no transfer without trustee consent. This is my present. It says I learned from my mistakes. I kept my hand on the paper. I did not yank it back when she frowned. I did not rush to soften the edges of what I had said. She stiffened. The friend stared at his cup. He had probably never had a man older than him refuse a plan that used the word just. When I left, I put $15 under the salt and walked out into the sun. The friend did not try to shake my hand. That was fine. I did not want to hold anything that felt slippery. That evening, a sedan slowed in front of the house. A woman with a tablet lifted her camera. I stepped onto the porch with a dish towel and put my palm to the glass where the notice sat. No photography, I said. Not listed. Agent preview, she said, as if that were a password. Not listed, I repeated. She left with a small shake of the head that said quaint. I can live with quaint when it means honest. At 9:40 that night, 2 men came with a dolly to pick up a dining table a stranger had told them was sold. They had work gloves tucked in their back pockets and the look of men who would rather finish a job than stand on a porch arguing with a man their father's age. It is not for sale, I said. It is in my kitchen. It is staying in my kitchen. They looked at each other, looked at the covenant, and decided not to be part of a story that ends with paperwork. They left. I texted my daughter, "Do not send anyone to my home." She replied, "It is my table." I wrote, "I bought that table with your mother in 1998. She wrote, "You are impossible." I put the phone away. I do not argue by text anymore. It turns into a contest of speed, not sense. The next morning, a city truck stopped. An inspector in a green jacket stepped out with a clipboard. "Complain about unpermitted interior demo," he said. "Mind if I look?" "Go ahead," I said, and pointed at the notice. He read it, nodded, and wrote the instrument number on his sheet. He walked the rooms, touched nothing, and came back to the door. He had a tired kindness in his eyes. "Looks intact," he said. He filled out a bright orange card and taped it next to my notice. "Stop work. Permit required. Demolition prohibited per recorded covenant. If a permit application comes through, we will deny it unless the trustee signs." He initialed it. "This should cool things off," he said. He meant it both ways. An hour later, my daughter pulled up with the man in the blazer and the contractor. I stood in the doorway and made myself a promise. I will fight for justice no matter what. For this home and for the future my grandchildren will walk into. No more being the soft spot people press. I will fight fair and in daylight. Soon the justice hour will come. You don't want to miss it. But before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. They stared at the orange card like it was a fire. The contractor whistled under his breath and took another picture. The blazer spoke first, smooth voice gone sour at the edges. "You cannot do this," he said. "I already did," I said. "County recorded it. Feel free to read it out loud." My daughter stared at the orange card, then at the lemon tree staked by the downspout. For a second, her face softened into someone I knew. Then it closed. She is good at closing. It is a skill and a problem. "You are going to regret this," she said. "Maybe," I said. "Not today." They left without the sledge. After the truck turned the corner, I put the kettle on and waited for the water to talk. I thought about regret. I have plenty. I regret not telling her no when she was 12 and asked for a birthday party I could not afford. I regret hiding bills from Mary to spare her when she told me not to. I regret acting like money could hold a family together when it could not. But I knew this. I would not regret a line that protected a childhood kitchen and a girl who wanted to learn how to hold a level bubble in the center. Life took a different pace after that. I taught my granddaughter to sand a handrail and to listen for the click that means a door is safe. We kept a ledger and a jar labeled payback. She wrote dates and amounts with a stubby pencil we clipped so it would not wander. She put 4 quarters in on a Tuesday and wrote, "lemon soil." She asked if she had to put money in every time. "No," I said. "Just write down what matters." She nodded like writing something down made it more real. She is learning the small math of daily life. That is a kind of inheritance I can give. We made grilled cheese on the stove Mary loved, medium heat, both sides buttered, and listened for the right sound, busy but not angry. We cooked chicken thighs and counted between lightning and thunder during a storm. After, we walked the yard with flashlights and picked up twigs. "Storms tell you what is loose," I told her. We wrote a note for the shed roof and fixed it the next day. She held nails like a magician holds coins. When one fell in the grass, she stood still and listened. "I heard it," she said, "and found it by sound." I was proud in a quiet way that did not need to be announced. My daughter tried new angles. She asked me to approve a photographer for just a few shots. Number. She sent me a rental listing with a glossy white kitchen and wrote, "This is what we could have." Number. She pushed a loan folder across a diner table. Number. Each no was smaller than the first one and easier to say. Not cruel, not loud, just no. There were days when I felt tired of saying no. I do not like what it does to my mouth. I am a yes man by nature. I like handing someone a tool and watching them build. But there is a difference between handing someone a tool and handing them your house. When my jaw ached from holding the line, I went out and planed the edge of a board until a thin ribbon came off and curled on my bench like a chip you could see through. Getting something true and flat under your hands will fix parts of a day that talking will not. I sold a walnut tote hand plane and used the money for a full pantry and shoes that fit my granddaughter's feet. The counterman at Hartley's turned the plane in his hands like it was a small animal. He named a fair price. I took it. On the driveway that night, I reached for the spot on the shelf where the plane had lived and felt the empty space. The loss was clean and a little sore. That is what a line costs. You give up something you like to keep something you need. I slept better than I thought I would. The neighborhood noticed the paper in my window and the orange card. Word travels. An older woman with a straw hat stopped while I was sweeping the walk and said, "I am glad you are keeping the porch light." I said thank you. The veteran across the street said my new steps were the best on the block. He has a way of making a compliment come out like a report. At the association meeting in the church hall, someone asked if the Whitaker place was changing hands. I said, "No, we had confusion. It is settled." We moved on to potholes and tree trimming. It was good to be part of the boring part of a community again. There were tests. A rental site popped up with old photos of my kitchen and a caption that said "Cozy Vintage, needs updating." A neighbor printed it and brought it over like a report from a scout. I called and asked for removal. The person on the phone sounded like someone who runs things. The listing came down the next day. Another afternoon, a truck idled out front with men in gloves, ready to pick up the sideboard. I stepped onto the porch, pointed at the notice, and said, "No." They shrugged and drove off. Boundaries are not speeches. They are short sentences in the same place every time. My daughter tried to change the utilities to her name to scare me. The gas company called and asked to confirm. I said no. I said a passphrase that made sense to no one but me. It was not clever. It was familiar. After I hung up, I felt silly for how relieved I was. Small winds feed a tired man. I got a paper in the mail that said an open house was scheduled for Sunday at 2. It was printed on nice stock with a photo that looked suspiciously like my kitchen from 10 years ago. I put the paper on the fridge under the lemon magnet and wrote, "Number." I called the number and said the word twice. The man on the other end said he would take me off the list. I said, "I am not on your list. You are on mine." He did not know what to do with that sentence. He said sorry and hung up. The day before that supposed open house, I had company. The quilting ladies came with stew, and sat at my table with their hair pinned up and their hands folded around the warm bowls. They told stories about Mary. They told me she once sewed a quilt with a mistake on purpose because she said there should be one place where a person could find the maker. I had never heard that. It hit me hard. I have been trying to smooth every rough edge for years. Maybe it is not my job to sand all of life down to nothing. My granddaughter's teacher called to say there was a field trip and they needed more adults. I said yes. On the permission slip there were lines for mother, father, or other. I circled guardian and wrote my name. I wrote my number and a note that said I can drive if needed. It felt strange to claim a word on a line. It felt right. When I put the paper back in my granddaughter's backpack, I slid a card in the small pocket with my name and number and a line that said, "If you need me and I am not here, show this to a grown-up." I wish someone had put a card like that in my pocket when I was young and brave in dumb ways. Field day came before the trip. My daughter texted at 8:02. "Running late. Save me a spot." At 9:10, the sack race started. I held my granddaughter's backpack and cheered until my throat felt raw. At 11:20, during the three-legged race, my granddaughter looked toward the parking lot and then looked at her feet and kept moving. She came in fourth and smiled anyway. I have been around long enough to know that fourth sometimes takes more heart than first. We ate orange slices in the shade. She said, "Can we practice running at home?" "We can," I said. That evening we timed laps around the block. Her first lap took 2 minutes 21 seconds. The second took 2 minutes 10. 11 seconds is a lot when you are little. She grinned and wrote the times in the ledger on a blank page labeled "Races." Progress should be written down, even if no one else reads it. The next day, an officer knocked. My daughter had asked for a welfare check because, she said, I was confused. The officer stood on the porch with his hat in his hand and asked me my name, my address, and the date. I told him all three. I showed him the covenant, the orange card, and the list on the fridge. I told him I boil water before I light the flame, because that is what you do with an old stove. He smiled like a man who has had to walk into houses that were not safe. He said he was sorry for the trouble. He said, "You are fine, sir." When he left, I sat down and let my hands shake for a minute. Being accused of confusion when you have finally gotten clear is a particular kind of sting. I let it pass like a small storm. On Saturday morning we held a yard sale. We put a table near the sidewalk, wrote fair prices on blue painter's tape, and taped a sign to cardboard. House stuff, not junk. Neighbors stopped by. The veteran bought a toolbox he did not need and promised my granddaughter a bike that needed new tubes. An older woman bargained hard over a lamp and then paid full price because she said the shade reminded her of her sister. A teenager counted out coins for a box of screws and asked me what they were for. "Everything," I said. A young couple asked if they could take a picture of the steps. I said yes to the steps. I am not against pictures. I am against people using pictures to make decisions for me. We counted the cash at the end, 118. We wrote it in the ledger. Things left the house that no one used. That is another kind of paying back. My daughter drove by twice. The second time she parked and got out. She looked at the table, then at the house, then at me. "You are selling my things," she said. "They are not your things," I said. "These are extras. You never asked for them and you never used them." I did not apologize for using the word never. There are days when you need a hard word to pin a soft lie to the table. She picked up a framed picture of a bird and put it down. "This is small," she said. "All of this is small." "Small is what I can hold," I said. She left without buying anything. My granddaughter watched her go and asked if we could put the leftover books in a little library near the park. We did. On the way back, we bought a hot dog from the man who sets up near the pharmacy. We ate on the curb because the bench was sticky. It was a good day. Good days do not need headlines. Sunday we made stew and set 2 plates at 5 o'clock and a third in case. At 5:20, the third plate stayed empty. I washed it and put it back. That is a small grief I can carry without making a scene. We ate. We cleaned up. We put a picture of the lemon tree stake on the corkboard next to a Polaroid of the house from the year we painted the trim. The board is starting to look like a map of good work that actually happened. Monday, the veteran wheeled a bike across the street. The tires were flat and the chain was brown. He showed my granddaughter how to pop the link, run the chain, and oil it. He had her do each step. Grease got on her fingers. She wiped it on her jeans and smiled. He said, "Ride it slow the first time," and jogged next to her once around the block. She did not fall. I clapped like a fool anyway. Then came the messages. My daughter posted online about how cruel it was for a father to keep a home from his child. A neighbor showed me on his phone. He asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. I folded laundry instead. I have learned the difference between a mess that needs a reply and a mess that needs time. 2 days later, the post was swallowed by other posts about dogs and storms and someone's birthday cake. It felt good to let a thing die without feeding it. A week later, a letter came about an application for a permit that had been denied. The envelope had my address and someone else's plan inside. It said, "Changes not permitted." It listed the instrument number. I made a copy and clipped it inside the cabinet above the stove. It was not a trophy. It was a tool. I wanted a record I could reach without logging into anything. On Thursday, my daughter texted a picture of a rental listing that looked like the inside of a magazine. "This is what we could have," she wrote. The rent number under the photo made my jaw tighten. "Looks clean," I wrote back. "If you gave us a lump sum, we could do 6 months up front," she wrote. "No," I wrote. "You are cruel," she typed. I put the phone in the drawer. I made coffee and stood by the stove. I remembered when she was 9 and we built a birdhouse that leaned a little because she had insisted on holding the drill and I had let her. She had laughed when the first sparrow nested anyway. There was a time she could see the point of imperfect things. Maybe she still can if her life gets quiet enough to hear it. Friday came bright. I checked the porch light in the morning and again at dusk because it matters to me that it works. I set 2 plates out at 5 o'clock and a third in case. If she came honest, there would be stew and bread. If she did not, there would still be stew and bread. By late summer, the lemon tree would push out 2 small blossoms that looked like stars. We were not there yet, but I could wait. I have time. On Saturday morning, a car I recognized pulled up. My daughter got out holding a large trash bag and a cardboard box. She set them down on the sidewalk and looked at me. "I am bringing back some things," she said. I nodded. She took a shirt from the bag, one of mine from years ago, and a stack of old mail. She handed them to me. I took them and said thank you. She did not say you are welcome. She looked at the lemon tree and then at my granddaughter. "Do your homework," she said, as if there were homework right then. My granddaughter said, "Okay," because she is polite. My daughter took a breath like she had a speech ready. Then she deflated. "I do not know how to fix this," she said, not looking at me. "You could start by paying back $5, I said. "Then 5 more. Or make me dinner on Sunday and do the dishes. Or say you are sorry without an explanation. Pick one true thing you can keep. Start there." I kept my voice even. I have learned that lectures are just noise. Offers are better. She looked at me, then at the house, then at the lemon tree. "I will think about it," she said. "That is fine," I said. "You can think here too. You can come for dinner. You can sit by the tree. But do not come to take." She nodded, just once. It was not a promise. It was not nothing. That afternoon, we baked lemon bars. We measured carefully and wiped the counter when sugar spilled. We set a timer. When they cooled, we cut them small and brought a plate to the veteran and one to the ladies from the quilting group. We ate ours on the porch steps. I took a picture of my granddaughter holding one bar and put it on the corkboard. It felt silly and right. The board is our ledger without numbers. Late that night, a photo came from my daughter. Lemon bars on a napkin on her car seat. The caption said, "These are good. There are more tomorrow," I wrote. "Dinner at 5. Her typing dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. She wrote, "I will try to come. Try is not a plan. It is better than silence." I put the phone down and went to bed. The next morning she did not come. She texted at 5:22. Something came up. My chest did that hollow thing it does when I get my hopes high by accident. I put a plate of stew in the fridge. I told myself to keep the door open without setting a place for a ghost. On Tuesday, my granddaughter put 4 quarters on the table and wrote in the ledger with care. May 14th, $1, lemon soil. "I did not borrow," she said, "but I want to show I can put money in too." "You can," I said. We taped her chart beside the ledger. She colored one square green. It looked good there. Seeing yourself as a person who contributes might be the only kind of pride that never turns sour. Wednesday, the veteran knocked and said the roof on his shed needed help. "It is a 2-hour job," he said. It took 3. We measured, cut shingles, and set nails. My granddaughter handed us the hammer and a cold bottle of water at 11:30. We ate sandwiches sitting on sawhorses and looked at our work. The shed did not leak that night. That is a decent kind of satisfaction. I told her, "You do not need to be the fastest. Be the one who shows up with the right nails Thursday night at 9:40 on the dot again, a heavier knock." 2 men I had never seen stood on the porch with a rolling dolly and gloves tucked in their back pockets. "We are here to pick up the dining table," one said. We went through it again. They left without trouble. Whoever was sending them seemed to think the hour mattered. It didn't. It annoyed me that they had been sent at all. I wrote a note and taped it next to the covenant. No pickups. No porch drops. Approval required. A line should look like a line. On Friday, my granddaughter brought home a flyer for a plant sale at school. We went on Saturday and bought marigolds for the porch steps and a small fern for the bathroom. The girl who rang us up counted change twice and still got it wrong. She blushed. I told her she was doing fine. She brightened. I want my granddaughter to see what it looks like when an adult gives a child a decent break. It is not a speech. It is a sentence and a smile. Sunday morning, my daughter called and started with, "I was thinking." I braced. "About what?" I asked. "We could list the house as is," she said, "just to see what offers we would get." The market is wild. We would not take a low offer. "We are not listing the house," I said. "You do not have to do anything," she said. "Just approve an agent to take photos." "No," I said. "This is my home." "You said it was mine," she snapped. "I said I offered it," I said. "You did not want a home. You wanted something nicer. This is not a product for you to flip." She hung up. The sign in my window already said "No photography. Private residence." I moved it higher. An hour later, another sedan slowed in front of the house, ignoring the warnings. A woman with a camera stepped onto the sidewalk. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch with a dish towel in my hand. "No photography," I said, with my palm open toward the sign. She lowered the tablet. "Agent preview," she said, as if that explained anything. "No listing," I said. "No preview." She shrugged like I was quaint and got back in the car. I went inside and thought about what was happening. There was a clear abuse pattern. That evening I checked the door hardware. I tightened the screws on the strike plate and adjusted the hinge pins so the door closed with a solid sound. I showed my granddaughter the difference, how a loose door rattles and a tight door answers with a click. She practiced closing it 3 times and said, "This feels safe." I want her to recognize safety in small noises. We cleaned the garage the next day. It had become a place where things went to disappear. We pulled out 3 boxes labeled MISC and sorted them into keep, donate, trash. We found the box of old kids' books her mother used to read, and my granddaughter carried them to the living room and made a shelf just for them. I showed her how to use a stud finder and a level. We marked the spots on the wall with painter's tape. She told me the bubble in the level was like a fish she had to keep centered. We laughed and got the shelf straight. When we were done, I wrote the date on a piece of tape and stuck it under the shelf. Finished is a good feeling to mark. On Monday, the neighborhood association needed a new notice board because the old one had rotted at the bottom. I brought scrap cedar and built a simple frame with a clear cover. I measured twice and let the veteran hold the level while I drove screws. People stopped and thanked us. It reminded me that a street is built out of a lot of small favors that never make a headline. When we finished, my granddaughter put a flyer for the plant sale in the board, even though it had already happened. "It looks better with something in it," she said. She was right. Later that week, she tried the cosine ask again. I said no faster. On the way home, I bought her a small level and a decent hammer, wrote her name on the handle, and left them on her porch with a note. "Use these on something you can finish this week." Wednesday, we went to my granddaughter's school for an open house. She showed me the science project she had made, a poster about how plants drink water. She had drawn a lemon tree and labeled the parts. The teacher shook my hand and said my granddaughter was careful and kind. I signed the volunteer sheet for field day, wrote my number and added available. My daughter did not come. We watched the class hamster run in its wheel. On the way out, my granddaughter asked if hamsters ever get tired of the wheel. "Probably," I said, "but maybe they like knowing where the edges are." She nodded in a serious way I recognized from Mary. Thursday brought rain, the kind that makes the whole house feel wrapped in a wool blanket. I fixed the loose latch on the kitchen window and showed my granddaughter how to oil the hinge. We listened to the difference before and after, the high squeak dropping to a soft swing. She said, "We made it quiet." I liked the way she said "we." Friday night we made a list for Saturday. Water lemon tree, sweep porch, bake bread, check smoke detector, write letters, run laps, fix the wobbly chair. We wrote it on a card and clipped it to the corkboard with a binder clip. I do not know when the corkboard became more important than my phone. It is easier for me to keep a promise to paper. Saturday, we did the list. The bread rose. The chair stopped wobbling. The lemon tree got its 90 seconds of water. We each ran 2 laps. My granddaughter beat her old time by 8 seconds. She wrote it down and drew a small check mark next to it. I asked her what the check mark was for. "It is for me," she said, "not for anyone else." Good. Sunday came, and at 5 o'clock we set 3 plates again. At 5:08 my daughter came in, hair damp from the rain, eyes hard like she had walked here through a speech. She looked at the covenant on the window, then at the orange stopwork card, then at the lemon steak. She said nothing. I said, "Stew?" She nodded. We ate in a quiet that was not hostile. My granddaughter told her about the hamster. My daughter listened and spooned stew and did not check her phone for 5 minutes, then 10. She washed dishes after we ate. She did not dry them well. She left water spots. I wanted to say something about water spots. I did not. There are some corrections that can wait. After, she stood at the corkboard and read the notes. "Water on Saturdays," she said, almost smiling. "You sound strict." "I am strict with things I can control," I said. She stood there another second. "I am sorry," she said, eyes on the card that said no deliveries without approval. She did not add a reason. She did not bend the word. She let it be what it was. Then she reached for her bag and took out a 5. She put it in the jar and looked away. It was not the amount. It was the direction. My granddaughter watched and said nothing. I did not make a speech about it. I wrote a line in the ledger. Sunday, $5, apology. That is not what the column was for, but it is what I wrote. She did not stay long. She said she had a thing. We did not ask what. When she left, she touched the lemon steak with 2 fingers like it might break. On the porch, she stopped and looked at the steps. "These are good," she said. They do not squeak. I said thank you. It was not a truce. It was not war. It was a night where a person did not make a mess on purpose. Life did not turn into a movie after that. There were still texts I did not answer and phone calls I let ring out. There were still people who slowed in front of the house and lifted a phone and then lowered it when they saw the sign. There were mornings I woke up angry because I had dreamed about old arguments and my body did not know they were over. On those mornings I made coffee and did one small job on the list and felt better by the time the cup was empty. The lemon tree grew 2 new leaves. My granddaughter measured them with a ruler and wrote the numbers on her chart. We added a line to the stake in small letters. Water on Saturdays. We laughed at how serious I sounded, but we did it anyway. She wrote her initials on the blue plastic watering can. It looked like a little promise she could carry. By late summer, the tree pushed out 2 small blossoms that looked like stars. We stood next to it and breathed in. The blossoms smelled like a clean kitchen. I know that is an odd thing to say. That is what it smelled like to me. Clean and simple and correct. We did not touch them. We just stood there and looked at them and then went inside and made dinner. I went to bed that night knowing this. I cannot make my daughter be the person I want. I can be the person I want. I can run laps with a girl who wants to beat her own time. I can sell a tool I love to buy shoes that fit her feet. I can say no to a folder full of tabs and say yes to a grocery list I can carry. I can keep my house a home. I can keep the line clear enough to see. And if my daughter ever steps over it in daylight, empty-handed and honest, she will know what she is stepping into. Stew, a chair, a ledger, a jar with quarters, a small tree that needs water on Saturdays, and a man who finally learned the weight of his own name. How do you measure love? By what you give away, or by what you refuse to lose? What do we owe our children? The life we can fund, or the truth we can stand by? Please share your thoughts in the comments.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales stories like this, hit subscribe.